we had a pretty large bang associated with the caution and warning there. Okay, as we have an apparent serious oxygen leak.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Houston, we've had a problem. He's in a roll and he can't stop it. Performing an evasive maneuver. Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here. I think we need to do a little more all-weather testing.
Welcome to space.
Hello, listener, and welcome to Failure to Launch, the space history podcast where we take you through all the mistakes, failures, and explosions that made modern space exploration possible. We are your hosts, Quinn, he, him.
Chris, he, him.
Joe, he, him.
Independent Chris, he, him.
And today we are finalizing our long series on Mittelwerk and the Dora camp, the concentration camp facility that produced Wernher von Braun's V-2 missiles. Now, as you heard, we have a guest. Joe Kassabian, author of many books and host of the Lions Led by Donkeys podcast. He's been on this show a few times for his insights on military history and to kind of have fun talking about space disasters, but he is also an accredited genocide historian, which is why we have brought him on today to offer his insights into how Mittelwerk fit into the larger Nazi concentration camp system and their use of slave labor. Joe, thank you for being here, and apologies for the not fun topic.
My entire academic career is based around not being fun.
Hooray.
So I'm really happy I can show up to other shows and just bring everybody down a peg.
Hell yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, after part 5, I think a lot of our listeners are riding pretty low. We may be at rock bottom, but we're going to see if we can't go further. In complete fairness, I know, I don't really like doing this with a lot of the episodes. This one is going to be more angry than sad a lot of the time. We like to mix up the emotions that we instill in our audience.
You'll find it's quite easy when talking about genocides and the general lack of justice that comes with them.
Oh, absolutely.
Anger and sadness tends to become one emotion.
We're going to talk about a guy who oversaw executions in a concentration camp, escaped to America as part of Operation Paperclip, got arrested and sent back to Germany for trials for what he did at this camp, and then got acquitted because they had assassinated all of the witnesses.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, and his name's Ricky. There's a lot of name alerts for like absolute monsters here. There's also a name alert for like a genuine hero, and I kind of don't want to name alert him, but his name is Bussy. So
That is a hero, actually.
and he gets absolutely fucked over. He is like a hero in the concentration camps, and then he escapes, but he winds up in East Germany, and he's a communist. So like the Soviets don't really like when their POWs come back.
No, they do not. And yeah, what else is on trend than a man with the last name Bussy getting fucked over, you know?
Now, as we get into this, I do want to reiterate our standing very big content warning on this entire series. Today will not be like the last part, but we are still talking about Mittelwerk, genocide, and slave labor. So if you don't want to hear about that stuff, do not listen. As before, the main source I'm going to be relying on for this part is A History of the Dora Camp by historian and Dora survivor André Sellier. All sources will be linked down below in the show notes. Now, where we last left off, we had covered the history of the Mittelwerk rocket factory, the Dora concentration camp, and the wider Mittelbau complex and all of its sub-camps, until their evacuation in early April 1945. So this was basically a period of chaos in the entire concentration camp network because they were being invaded. Germany was being invaded from like 2 or 3 sides at this point. The Western Allies were pushing in. They had taken Aachen. The Soviets were coming in from the east. And this period was all of these concentration camps, Auschwitz, like Buchenwald, Nordhausen. They are all shifting. They're all sending convoys of prisoners all over the place to try and keep them out of Allied hands, while also not knowing if the camp they are being sent to is currently occupied by the Allies yet.
And a lot of those transfers, so to speak, are better described as death marches.
Yes.
Liquidation, mass execution, a lot of people were not intended to make it to the next cap alive.
Yes, and this is something that we get into a bit with Part 5, is that through its operation as a work camp, it's estimated that around 15,000 people died at Mittelbau, and another 11,000 died just during the evacuations, and that is just in a period of like 2 weeks in April. For an idea of like how rapidly the death toll piles up. On April 4th, for example, a convoy of around 400 prisoners was sent by train from the Rotelberode subcamp towards the Neuengamme concentration camp. They made it as far as the town of Gerdelegen before damaged rail lines stopped their convoy. Instead of finding another way, the SS forced the Rotelberode prisoners and hundreds more into the Eisenschneiber farm and set it on fire. More than 1,000 people died in what became known as the Gerdelegen massacre.
That was more the rule than the exception, unfortunately.
And if you ever really want to piss yourself off, you can find the picture of the cemetery for the victims, and it is more than 1,000 crosses and stars of David, and almost every single one of them just has the word unbekannt on it, unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as to how much of this total death toll, so basically, the best estimation through calculations done by André Sellier and other historians is that through the total 20 months of its operation, more than 26,000 prisoners died in the Nordhausen concentration camp network, or Mittelbau. As to how much of this can actually be attributed to the V2 program, it is very difficult to say. So I know previously that I have mentioned, like, the V2 killed 20,000 people making it. As we talked about last time, a lot of the death that happens at Mittelbau isn't on the V2 factory line. It's because as soon as the V2s start getting built, Hans Kammler, the guy running the facility, he decides that he is going to turn this giant hill, the Konstein, into a hyper factory for every single kind of German plane. So as soon as these slave laborers are done carving out this factory, they are immediately put to work just trying to turn a mountain into an anthill.
Yeah.
And this digging, even though, like, this is late 1944, everyone knows that none of this is going to happen. And, like, prisoner accounts, we talked about it last time, always bring up the fact that, like, they know they are humiliated, and they know that they are slaving away and dying to, like, dig a big pit that will never be filled.
Mm-hmm.
That there is no point to any of it, aside from the extermination and the cruelty. Overall, though, more than 6,000 V2s would be produced, with 95% of those coming from the tunnels of the Mittelwerk factory. It's estimated that civilian casualties from V2 launches could be as high as 9,000, mostly in the cities of London and Antwerp. But by mid-April 1945, the Nordhausen region and the Mittelbau facilities were firmly in American hands. While the first priority was clearing the area of any German stragglers and helping the more than 1,000 survivors they found in the Bolke Kaserne sick camp, it didn't take long for American officials to realize that they had stumbled onto a superweapon gold mine, and they were going to pick it fucking clean.
Scavengers.
By the time Nazi Germany surrendered on May 8, 1945, the Allied nations had long agreed on the partitioning of Germany between them, and they had largely agreed on where those lines would fall. However, when it came to actually fighting the Nazis, prior to that partitioning, they had all agreed that they would basically just fight the Nazis wherever they found them. It's not like, oh, the US Army reaches a line on the map and says, like, we can't go further, that's the Soviet zone, we're going to let them handle it. All of them were just, you see Nazis, you shoot them, you take their territory, we will sort out the rest later.
If only we kept that up until the current era.
What that means is that Allied armies in May 1945, when the fighting ended, were often occupying territory that was slated to go to another country. Nordhausen, with all of its rocket treasures of Mittelwerk, was supposed to become part of the Soviet occupation zone. And you can already see where this is going. Quoting André Sellier, as it turned out, on May 8, virtually everything to do with the V2s, sites, facilities, already constructed rockets and rocket parts, archives, personnel, was very largely under American control in the zones that had to be retroceded. The Americans therefore had only several weeks to take a certain number of initiatives if they were not to lose control. So, just by pure chance, American units wind up occupying practically every useful rocket facility in Germany, and also almost every one of those facilities is supposed to go to either the British or the Soviets.
Huh.
So they have a plan, like this is in May, The handover is supposed to happen in July. So they have just a couple of weeks to we need to clear this place the fuck out.
Just rip everything up and ship it back.
Yeah. Everything that is bolted down, take the bolts too, because again, none of these guys, they don't have von Braun on hand.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what any of this stuff does. So as they are picking through this facility, they just assume that everything is important. Up to the point of they take the scaffolding with them on the off chance that maybe it's special scaffolding. Maybe we need it.
This is my space scaffolding.
And that scaffolding, on the more grim note, was the one that was used to hang all of the prisoners.
So the cursed scaffolding. Got it.
Basically, yeah. That scaffolding made its way to White Sands, New Mexico. Hooray.
Ugh.
No wonder the vibes are fucked.
What followed was a colossal achievement in scavenging. What we know today as Operation Paperclip started off as Operation Overcast, and it had the stated goal of delivering enough parts, machinery, documentation, and personnel to the United States for them to build 100 V-2 ballistic missiles of their own. Through May, an entire network of American experts and intelligence officers tracked down every lead they could. They found a cache of hidden documents in a mine in the British occupation zone and shipped all 14 tons of these designs and drawings to America. There's multiple truckloads of just booklets, just papers, blueprints, all of it, that they steal from the British.
I think we should all be happy that someone hit the British with that for once and not the other way around.
Yeah. We are going to talk about some stuff that the British try, and it's another name alert, so that's going to be fun. Meanwhile, Werner von Braun and his brother Magnus were negotiating on behalf of the V2 project scientist. I am not going to go all in on Operation Paperclip here, since we will be covering that in its own series, but it's often depicted as the Americans just captured these guys and shipped them off to the States, and that is not what happened. All of the V2 high leaders, the upper scientists, the engineers and whatnot, they knew that the war was going to end, and they all prepared as a group, as a collective, to try and find a new place to keep doing their rocket work. They knew that they were a very valuable commodity. So what they did was they did everything they could to improve their negotiating hand. They took all of their documents. Actually, the trove of documents that the Americans found was supposed to be used for negotiating. It was supposed to be a chip in the negotiating game. So they hid caches of documents and they hid parts all around Germany. Mine shafts were just filled with old V2 stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the scientists themselves had gone into hiding in chalets in the Bavarian Alps until they got the signal for von Braun. So von Braun, his brother, Dornberger, a couple of these other guys, they form a negotiating team. And what really happens is it's kind of like a really fucked up version of Shark Tank, where the Nazis are getting pitched by the Americans, the British, the French, and the Soviets to see who's going to give them the best deal. And they are fielding calls from all of these different countries. It's all right, well, America said they're going to fund our rocket stuff. The Soviets say that we get to stay in Germany, and they're deciding who they're going to go with. And they have all of the leverage because they can just say, if you try and take us by force, you'll never find out where the V2s are.
Yeah, it's Nazi free agent season.
Basically, yeah.
Oh God, I hate that concept.
And we've talked about this in other series, Operation Paperclip. It starts out, the reason why a lot of these other guys wind up going to the French, the British, and the Soviets is actually because Operation Paperclip limits its selection. They start off telling von Braun, we will take 500 people. And then once von Braun agrees, they say, we will take 100 people. So, the number of recruits that the Americans get is deliberately cut down because the government is afraid of what happens if we bring 500 people in, people are going to know they're Nazis. They still bring in a lot of Nazis.
Yeah, the Soviet program actually took in more people than Operation Paperclip by several magnitudes.
22,000 people. We were actually just about to talk about this. Finally, as part of this rush to beat the Soviets, Mittelwerk was picked to the bone. Under the guidance of Colonel Holger Toftoy, who we've talked about previously.
That's another fucking name.
Yeah, everyone here is name alert. The first train left Nordhausen on May 22nd. Over the next week, another 80 trains would be sent. More than 450 tons of rocket parts and machinery needed to build them was stripped from the factory and sent to America. I can't remember the exact factoid. I think it was like 9 entire Liberty ships were filled with these rocket parts.
God.
That's fucking substantial.
Yeah, and it all makes its way to White Sands, New Mexico. And it makes it there because the German launch crews are hopefully going to be like, hopefully America is going to impress the sharks and they're going to go to America.
It would be really funny if we had the same stories coming out about like New Mexico that you hear about Argentina. It's like, well, there's this weird town in New Mexico where there's a strange amount of twins.
Oh, there's this incredible story because the Operation Paperclip guys actually get fucked over because America just wants the V2s because they're new and fancy. As soon as the Cold War starts, America is like, missiles are dumb. We have 10,000 bombers. Curtis LeMay hates the idea of missiles, and he's convinced that he can beat the Soviets with just bombers. So as soon as these guys go to America, they don't do any rocket stuff for like 10 years. They are just left in a base in New Mexico and told to like, I don't know, have fun.
Just go percolate down there.
So like a bunch of them defect, a bunch of them go back to Germany, a bunch of them go back to like private industry. But there is a great newspaper where like they're complaining about how the food sucks. So a local paper is like, German scientist complains about food, subheadline, doesn't like, quote, rubbery chicken.
Look, Germany, I've eaten your food, man. Like, you have nothing to complain about. It's just like hearing complaints about like Dutch, like the Dutch complaining about food. Like, I've seen what you eat. You cannot complain.
I do hope they were giving the Nazis just like, here's some boiled chicken and broccoli, bitch.
Yeah, they get put on a professional bodybuilder's diet all the time, just out of pure spite. Seasonless chicken, broccoli, white rice, 3 meals a day.
I don't want to give this to them. I don't want to imagine jacked Nazi scientists, but a bunch of them did have nothing to do but work out in the New Mexico base.
Yeah, it tracks.
So like Magnus von Braun is just eating his bodybuilder diet, getting ripped, and never getting to work on rockets again.
A whole bunch of poor Nazi engineers just getting really dialed in on their macros.
I mean, Operation Paperclip also picked up the guys behind human experimentation and also chemical weapons trials. So I would not put that past them to like try and like this is actually the invention of modern bodybuilding science.
Yeah, like Shiro Ishii from the Japanese program was in, I believe, Maryland at the time because he was brought over. So I think Shiro Ishii went to the lab and created the world's first version of Rich Piana in New Mexico.
That's fun.
Yeah, Rich Piana was actually a boy from Brazil, but he was so jacked that the Hitler look never kind of grew in. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't also talk about some of the other countries' effort to get some of that good V2 tech. The British especially were not happy with the Americans stealing stuff from their occupation zone, and they tried unsuccessfully to stop the convoys full of rocket parts from leaving Europe. In the end, they were only able to get their hands on a handful of V2 missiles, mostly captured from launch units in the field. And they attempted 3 unsuccessful launches from the town of Cuxhaven before giving up.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
It's the first town I've ever seen that actually only has 1 chair in the entire place.
Just 1 stool sitting in the middle.
That could absolutely be like a horror movie of like, a young married couple move to a new little town and everyone, it's just all of the locals are cultists except they're all cucks.
It's liminal space horror, but only for cucks.
The chair is folding around you into a 4D space.
What if MC Escher liked to watch someone else fuck his wife?
They're just fucking on a bed in the middle and like there's chairs like on the ceiling. Everyone, it's like going to the opera. Everyone has their little like opera glasses on, like, yes.
The executive cuck desk.
Maybe it's like the meter where like there is, you have to have the original meter. You have to have the original pound somewhere. There is the original cuck chair in Cuxhaven that all others are modeled after.
That's right.
Otherwise it loses definition.
And once a year, all the Germans that live there have to walk around it in a circle like it's the Kaaba.
The Soviets had an even more difficult time with their paperclip equivalent, Operation Osoaviakim, which is also the name of like a Soviet Boy Scouts organization at the time, basically.
Mm.
The only senior German scientist who went to work for the Soviets was Helmut Grotrup, and I will never pass up a chance to talk about Helmut, the socialist union organizer turned Nazi rocket scientist turned Soviet rocket scientist until he escaped to West Germany and invented the chip card. Any card you have that, like your credit card, anything you have that has a chip was invented by this absolute fucking weirdo. And I mostly love him because he was a colossal wife guy. He would do anything. He did what he did for his wife Irmgard until he divorced her. To explain this, I am going to go back to one of my favorite books, Red Moon Rising by Matthew Brzezinski. Quote, "Unfortunately for the Russians, he came in a package deal with the imperious Frau Grotrup, who viewed the Red Army as her personal catering service, right down to the show horses she demanded for the stables of the sprawling villa she had selected for her residence. Frau Grotrup fired cooks and assistants on a weekly basis, and the never-ending shopping list she presented to her husband's astonished Soviet employers required the full-time attendance of a colonel. My sister goes to university wearing men's boots," wrote one of Frau Grotrup's indignant Russian minders. "She's selling her last dress to buy food for our sick mother. My wife Tamara had to quit her studies because she couldn't make it without my help. And here I am getting saddle horses." But Frau Grotrup got her horses, her BMW, a pair of cows for fresh milk, and even her insistence on a Soviet officer as a riding companion. This absolutely rules. I love all of this.
Imagine being the Soviet colonel who is like working his way up through the party and military ranks. Like, you're going to be the NKVD chief in charge of that guy's wife.
Yes. Brackets, in charge of doing everything she wants.
You're going to be the government-appointed wife minder.
and like the leverage through all of this was basically like anytime, you know, this didn't actually happen, but basically like anytime Irmgard didn't get what she wants, you're just like, all right, Helmut, sweetie, do the thing. And he like plants a pistol against his forehead. Do what the lady says. After assembling a few hundred lower-ranked scientists and engineers, Grotrup was put in charge of the so-called Raab Institute, and he was actually put back to work in Mittelwerk. So we've talked about this previously in the series. Mittelwerk means middle work, like it is the central hub, it is the middle of this network. The Soviets then creatively renamed the facility to Zentralwerk, or Central Works. Staying in Germany was actually one of the main draws that the Soviets had to lure in engineers. So like Operation Paperclip, those guys obviously had to go to America. They had to leave their homes behind, they had to leave a lot of their families behind. But that only lasted about a year with the Soviets, before the entire program was packed up and sent to Moscow. 5,000 rocket experts and their families, more than 22,000 people in total, were shipped off in a few weeks. Which, like, for the Nazis, you know, womp womp. And on the other hand, for the Soviets, they certainly have a lot of experience with wide-scale resettlements of populations.
I can't believe my Soviet employers lied to me. Me, the humble Nazi rocket scientist.
I'm going to invent credit cards. Fuck you.
I like that guy's politics are as confused as your average Twitter users these days. Like, I'm a socialist, I'm a fascist, I'm a socialist again.
Just whatever, yeah, like whatever my wife tells me at the moment. Well, I mean, I do appreciate that he kind of had that as like a guiding star. Like, it doesn't matter who he's working for his wife.
It's the neural equivalent of CrossFit. You're just doing ideological confusion constantly.
Yeah, and yeah, like Irmgard Grotrup, I have to respect. Also because she wrote the main historical document for this this time period. Helmut didn't write his own book.
He probably wasn't allowed to. He's like, no, you stand over there and mind all your rockets and shit. I'm going to force this poor Soviet colonel to dictate my book.
This is my ghostwriter. His name's Yevgeny. I have informed his commanders that he will be executed if he makes a typo.
Yeah, that's why at the end of every paragraph it says, please kill me.
Dora trials.
Now, in the wake of Germany's surrender, every major power sought to find and prosecute war criminals in the territory they occupied, especially where it pertained to concentration camps and exterminations. These can be broadly broken down into three categories: pre-Nuremberg trials in 1945, the Nuremberg trial itself, which ended in 1946, and then other trials taking place after in 46-47. And then there's also some trials that happen all the way out into like the 70s and 80s. This is important to consider because these trials were conducted very differently based on when they happened. Early American trials, for example, were, in the words of an American historian, concentrated on proving guilt by circumstance. This means that they weren't about finding guilt for like one specific crime, like, hey, like, were you specifically the guy on this date who killed this prisoner? It was more about, were you involved in this wider umbrella of a colossal crime against humanity? And if you are, then that is what you are guilty of. In this system, camp commandants were automatically responsible for crimes conducted in their camp. This broader attitude towards Nazi crimes meant that many more were charged, convicted, and executed early on. However, later trials shifted the accusations to proving that a specific person was responsible for a specific crime at a specific date. You know, it stopped being like, were you an SS executioner, and can we prove definitively that you right here executed this guy? This naturally required a much higher level of evidence. Evidence that also very often wasn't there because the SS had done work to cover their tracks. They had not done anything to hide, like, that the exterminations and executions had happened, but rather they had executed witnesses. They had, like, at Dora specifically, we talked about this in part 5, the red capos, the ones who could have been witnesses to the crimes committed, were all assassinated or they committed suicide prior to the evacuation of the camp. So whenever these lawyers go to attempt these trials, very often SS guys are acquitted because they don't have evidence. They cannot definitively prove that this guy did this thing.
Yeah, it was a bit of a trend in the early trials to be less based in legality, to the point that a lot of American lawyers and judges, specifically members of the American Supreme Court, were like, I am not working on these cases. These are not based in law. I'm not saying I disagree, right, but I'm also not saying that they shouldn't have done that. Yeah, I get it.
If I personally am ever going to trial for anything, I want the highest level of the standard of evidence and whatnot, not just the blanket approach. However, we will see that the highest standard of evidence approach, leads to very, very, very few people ever seeing justice. Not to mention the fact that, like, in the the SS was aware of what was going to happen. They were aware of the end of the war. Heinrich Himmler was famously trying to find ways to weasel out for like a year prior to Germany's surrender. And this happens throughout the SS. Like, SS guys get rid of their uniforms. They pretend to be army. They disappear into the POW camp system, or they just disappear entirely.
A lot of dudes tried to remove their blood mark tattoos.
Right.
And specifically, they stopped giving it at some point because they didn't want SS men to be able to be identified as SS men. Because, like, oh, this is really hurting our recruitment.
Fighting hard not to make an ICE joke right now.
Well, you can tell who they are by all the Punisher skull tattoos and stickers they have on their truck.
Living to see the day that people live in shame of having those.
Yeah, I don't know, January 21st, 2029, a bunch of dudes trying to get their Punisher tats lasered off.
Now, why did you get this on under your arm, like a blood mark? It was just a comfortable place to get a tattoo.
Now, to compare these two strategies, we can take a look at the two Mauthausen camp trials. The first was conducted in 1946. Out of 61 defendants, every single one was found guilty. 3 were sentenced to life imprisonment, and 58 to death by hanging.
We call that a good start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second trial, taking place in 1947, had 8 defendants. 4 of them were sentenced to death, 1 to life imprisonment, 2 got between 2 and 3 years in prison, slap on the wrist, and 1 was acquitted completely and found totally innocent.
Yep.
And this is actually on the high end of executions.
Yeah. That tends to get worse with time.
We're trending in the wrong direction here.
Yeah, it has a lot to do with, of course, like the burden of evidence changing to be more based in legality, so to speak. But also, as the years separate from the end of the war, people lose the taste for vengeance. And by vengeance, I mean justice. They just want it to be over and done with, especially in regards to Germany and the rebuilding of it and the foundation of its new legal state. They're like, oh, well, if we just need to move on. Stop looking at it.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of comparisons can be made to American Reconstruction in a lot of ways.
I'm just like, I think they've learned their lesson. I think they're good. Let's just call it a blank slate now.
Yeah. It's speeding through the tape at the end of the race and hoping that everybody's fine with it.
Yeah. Now, I am also not going to say that the dragnet execution method didn't have downsides. Also, like we talked about, probably illegal. Quote, among the SS executed was Otto Forschner, commander of Dora when the camp was created and until the beginning of 1945. He had then been placed at the head of the Kofering camp, one of the most terrible subcamps of Dachau. His quick elimination would deprive the later Dora trial of a first-rank witness. So basically, some of these guys who get caught up in the earlier waves of executions, like this guy gets caught up in the Dachau trial and executed, although he would have been very useful later in the Dora trials.
Especially because they almost always flipped.
Yeah. Like we'll talk about this later. Two of the key witnesses in the Dora trial are capos, Greens, criminals, who had been big SS collaborators and flipped in order to not die. Although considering how the Dora trial goes, they probably would have had good chances anyway.
And the whole ideas and thoughts and writing on capos has changed a lot over the years, where they, at the end of the war and the beginning of the trials, they were thought as one-to-one collaborators without a doubt.
Right.
And that has softened somewhat over the years, rightfully so.
Oh, yeah. And we've talked about that. That is something that I actually was not aware of prior to this series is we've talked a lot about the different conditions at different camps and how much the prisoner administration could change that, Buchenwald becoming a better place to live once the socialists take over, for example. There are plenty of examples of green criminal capos who were good because the Nazis had a very wide idea of what was criminal, but it was also like if you had green capos, on average, you were much worse off than if you had reds.
Yes.
So all of this is to give a bit of context on why the eventual Dora camp trial happened the way it did. Preparations had started all the way back in April 1945 when the camp was liberated. One prisoner, a young Polish lawyer named Wincenty Hein, I'm probably mispronouncing that, had been made the main clerk and scribe for the Nordhausen camps. As such, he knew exactly how to use the documents that the SS had left behind to tie certain members to certain crimes, executions of prisoners mostly. In the months after liberation, Hein put together an entire proposed bill of indictment, identifying perpetrators and including an overall description of the conditions and crimes at Mittelbau from first-hand experience. He spent the next 2 years working with the Americans to try and convince them to get these trials started, which did eventually happen in late 1947. From André Sellier, quote, "The 1947 trial was not satisfying, but that was not due to any inadequacies in the prosecution. It lacked, both as defendants and witnesses, the main protagonists. The principal defendant should have been Hans Kammler, as much for the tunnel in the first months as for the work sites, subsequently under control of his Sonderstab. He had disappeared in May 1945. The camp's first commander, Otto Forschner, was not there either. He had been executed after the trial of the Dachau camp. Also missing was his successor, Bayer, who was in hiding. He would later be arrested and charged with actions committed at Auschwitz and would die in prison before coming to trial. The two German civilians having played an important role when the tunnel was undergoing modification work were also absent. They were, above all, Sawatzki, who had died in May 1945 under unknown circumstances, and Rudolph, who had left for the United States with his colleagues from Peenemünde. So basically, none of the guys getting tried at Dora are any of the higher-ups. They are exclusively, there's a couple of, commandants of subcamps. There are, just SS guards thrown in, and there are a handful of capos. Some, Hans Kammler just disappears. There's evidence that he was interviewed by the United States, and I have seen articles arguing this way or that about where he wound up, or if he died. But regardless, we don't know officially, and he never officially faced justice for what he did.
Yeah, there's stories that he got, killed by partisans. There's stories that he was whisked away. But what's interesting is all the people that the United States brought with Operation Paperclip, we all know who they are.
Right. They weren't hidden.
No,
so,
nobody was ninja'd
guy?
Away. Yeah. He was almost certainly murdered by someone at the end stage of the war.
Gotcha.
There's no evidence otherwise. Nobody else that was paperclipped vanished into thin air. There's a few people that vanished under their own volition through help from, say, the rat lines and, you know, the Catholic Church, and others that managed to kind of vanish like a fart in the wind. But even them, we had evidence of what specific South American countries they were hiding in, almost always. Nobody vanished without a trace. You know?
I always love that. I think it was the aircraft designer. I think his name was Kurt Tank.
You got into the wrong line of design.
I know. But basically, I think like the third country to ever field advanced jet fighters, something like that, like third, fourth, like really up there, was Argentina.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And it was with a prototype German fighter that he had like taken the designs for.
This looks an awful lot like a 262.
The Argentine engineers, like, they're following the drawings exactly, so they wind up painting a swastika on the side.
It's a 262 that could dance flamenco.
That's actually a structural swastika. The entire plane collapses without it.
What's wrong? We constructed it to print.
And now we're just talking about the Finnish Air Force.
Yeah. No. Ours is on a right angle. It is not diagonal. That is entirely different.
That argument always reminds me of like the Office Space's Michael Bolton argument. Why should I have to change my name? He's the one who sucks.
Of just like the Finnish argue, like, actually no, it's an Indian symbol. It's a Hindu symbol. We're all just really into that now.
No, it's a propeller. It's for our airplanes.
Yeah, we just really love prop planes.
Oh, I found the plane that he designed, and it looks like he just stole the notes for a MiG.
I mean, I think it would have been the other way around, realistically.
Oh shit, maybe.
Because this is like, he designs this. I mean, he would have been in like the dumb emergency fighter program where every single like engineering student left in Germany was just like, hey, like, do you want to design a fighter jet? Cool.
One of my favorite things that the Nazis ever did was the Acme Lab for Jet Research.
Oh.
And that was the emergency fighter program. It's like, what is it? Can we put a jet on it and launch it up?
Every single one of these is designed to murder teenagers in new and innovative ways. They've got like the comet melts them. The
Volkswagen's wing the wing falls off.
Is made out of balsa.
No, it's balsa and acidic glue, so it has the stopwatch going of, okay, we put it together.
You just get in the cockpit and the fumes. It's like huffing glue the whole time you're in there.
I mean, several of them had no ability to land. It was like you attempt to glide or die. Or in one case, I think it was like bail out and hope your parachute works in 1945.
You just have a very gentle crash.
Yeah. They'll take you right to the scene of the crash.
Yeah.
My favorite was the Germans designed and built a manned V-1 cruise missile.
Yes, they did.
Which is very similar to the Oka, like the Japanese kamikaze rocket fighter, except the Germans always had this idea of like, no, you'll just like point it at the target, you pull this lever to lock the controls, and then just bail out, like just bail out, kid.
Yeah, just jump out right next to the roaring jet engine.
The jet engine above your head.
Oh no, I shit you not, it is a foot above your head.
I'm sure that was just there for like the kids' comfort. Also, the thing never flew in combat, but like, I'm sure they would have bolted those kids in there as soon as they were ready for launch.
Yeah, I mean, there was all sorts of arguments against it. Weirdly, it was like one of the few armament programs that I've read about in Nazi Germany where officers were like, "That's not something we do. We might be committing the Holocaust, but we do not suicide bomb.
We don't kill ourselves." Yeah, it is kind of weird that like of all of the insane things that like, it's awful, but the kamikazes had a better track record than trying to bomb American ships. Like in a pure military strategy, going at it the conventional way killed more pilots.
Arguably, the kamikazes were far more useful than the Imperial Japanese Naval Air Force there at the end of the
war. Although they were also, as your episode, I think, went into it, incredibly abused into saying yes. They were not all the volunteers that they were claimed to be.
Oh, God, no. No, and if you went out on a mission and came back, which did happen on several occasions, you were like, if you come back next time, we're going to fucking kill you. You do realize that, right?
I do still love that they allowed them the first time of just like, all right, Po Buddy's nerfed.
Whoopsie doodle.
Whoopsie.
Oh, it's okay. Shinji got the first boat. We understand you couldn't find another one. You better not come back again, though.
I wanted the carrier. He stole my kill.
Fucking hacks! Hacks, bitch!
What am I supposed to do? Hit the ice cream boat?
That would have been the ultimate morale strike, is to like launch the Oka missile directly into the nurse ship, because then everybody, like, obviously their healthcare is taken out, and sailors can't creep on nurses anymore. Or you launch the kamikaze directly into the ice cream boat. Everybody's like, oh man,
it's
guys.
a mushroom cloud, but it's pink, brown, and white.
Yeah,
it's just Neapolitan.
I feel like
I
feel like that would be like the bad idea, though. Like that would be like Pearl Harbor too, you know, like,
oh, they'd fight even harder, take no prisoners.
If you fly a kamikaze at the Neapolitan ship, you need 3 different kamikazes that are 3 different distinct flavors.
It's just got enough ice cream stored in the hull. It's like Project Habakkuk. The thing just doesn't stop floating.
If anybody is aware of the law of equivalent exchange, it should be Japanese pilots.
The atomic bombings were actually necessary because after the loss of the ice cream ships, American troops were determined to take all the mochi they could, ransacking through Japan, taking all of their ice cream treats.
Hey Steve, does this mochi taste like ash to you?
Just taking the mochi hammer at just gunpoint. Just no. This is mine.
Doing Operation Paperclip, but only for Japanese confectionaries and bringing them back home to New Mexico.
Taking red bean buns away at like a rapid capacity.
Listen, no one ever talks about Unit 732, the people who invented mochi.
I don't want to think about how Unit 730 whatever invented anything.
I said 732. I said 732. All right.
The neighbors that now have a bad rap.
We are not with them. Now, because the Dora trial was a post-Nuremberg trial, it was limited to the law. Boo.
Nobody likes the law.
Basically, they had to prove exact perpetrators, exact guilt with a specific crime. So it's like, you know, it's playing Clue instead of just saying, your SS, die.
And that's like literally a problem that continues on to this very day with like the advent of the ICC. And like,
right.
To not go into that rabbit hole of why that institution functionally cannot and will not work, investigating these massive crimes of which there's no equivalent in any kind of criminal capacity at all, is functionally impossible, right? Like, yes, for example, under these same requirements of evidence, Adolf Hitler would not be able to be found guilty for the crime of the Holocaust. You know what I mean?
There's no evidence that he directly ordered anything.
Exactly. And it's one of those things that occasionally that is the case where, you know, the leader of a country will straight up be like, no, you need to do this. Signed, me, president of so-and-so.
Send tweet.
Yeah, most of the time that is not the case. And, you know, that trickles downward. Like, no order to any death squad generally says, go kill all these people in this village.
Right.
So it makes the concept of criminal prosecution virtually impossible. And they know that. That's why they're doing it.
Yeah. And a lot of that, you know, like we talked about with Mittelwerk specifically, is before the end of the war, like the SS know that this is happening. They are making preparations to try and get out of any future war crimes. And a big part of that is they execute all of the camp elders at Dora. I think it's like Legeraltesten, something like that. All of the red capos, anyone who had been arguing against them or like negotiating for better prisoner conditions, they all die in like February, a couple of months before liberation. In all, 19 defendants were tried in the Dora trial, out of thousands of SS who had worked in the Mittelbau camp network. The accused were 14 SS, 4 camp capos, and 1 civilian. That civilian is an interesting case because he was Georg Ricky. We talked about Ricky a bit in part 3. He was the factory manager of Mittelwerk, because Mittelwerk was a company. It was an actual, it was a private industry that Ricky ran because he had previously run, I think, a car factory and a tank factory.
Oh, is this the freak that took it upon himself?
This is, yeah, he previously ran DMAG, which was a tank manufacturer, and he takes over Mittelwerk, and he's the guy, among other things, what he gets charged with, that we know that he did, was personally oversee executions in Hall 41. So this is the part with the gantry. This is where the rockets get assembled vertically. It is the only chamber tall enough to have mass hangings in Mittelwerk. And crucially, as we talked about, whenever these hangings happen, the corpses are left up for days, dangling at shoulder level so that people bump into them.
Ugh.
Yeah. He had also escaped to the United States as part of Operation Paperclip. So when he was eventually accused in the Dora trial, which is an American military trial, parts of the army have allowed him to escape and are trying to protect him, and other parts of the army are saying, like, no, he's a criminal, bring him back. Officers in the Army Ballistic Missile Agency, or ABMA, tried to get the charges dropped, since it could spread suspicion to all of those other Nazi scientists they'd recruited. And the party line for the Americans was always that these scientists, they were just apolitical. They were just following orders.
And a lot of that is the fault of Werner von Braun.
Absolutely.
He led the charge on that shit. A noted member of the SS.
Yes. and like we talked about this last time, but he claimed to not have any ownership of Mittelwerk, even though he was the head of the board of several Mittelwerk agencies. He knew whether or not he was actually there and ordered executions. Like, he was instrumental in planning what he knew was a death factory.
And was a member of what was declared a criminal organization. There's pictures of him in his SS uniform, which is another thing that he denied up until someone found a picture of. He's like, well, I only wore it twice. And it was for an official function. I'm like, well, I imagine that's most SS men, Werner. You fucking asshole.
Just him continuously lying. Hey, is this you, player, with that suit on? You want to explain that one a little more?
Hugo Boss had great style. That's all I will say.
Yeah, this is not a situation like the British royal family where they only wore it to Halloween parties, my dude.
I could imagine him trying to pull the defense of like, well, I
see you.
You've caught me.
I hear you.
I was doing SS Stolen Valor.
That Hugo Boss strip got me out.
Yeah. I wasn't actually in the SS, and I'm ashamed to have ever stolen their valor. Like,
doing the South Park videos, like, we're sorry. We're sorry.
Yeah, I would take that if instead of him being in front of the fireplace, it was in the flame trench under the Saturn V.
Yes. And of course, like, the United States couldn't admit that, like, he pulled one over on us and lied, and we believed him because he was so entrenched in NASA at that point.
And not to mention, like, Werner von Braun aside, there are reports, like, whenever other Nazis get interviewed, like, all of them are getting interviewed by intelligence officers. There's a bunch of them where you can read the reports, and the reports just say, like, yeah, this Kurt de Boos guy, he is an ardent Nazi. I always like to look at it as like, all right, well, like, when did they join the Nazi party? If they joined in 1941, then there's at least a decent case for like, oh, they were doing it to survive. There are guys who joined the Nazi parties in the 1920s.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh yeah, was that just to advance your career back when the Nazis got like 1% of the vote? No, like, these guys are diehard Nazis until they
did
die.
it for the love of the game.
Yeah, like, it's like von Braun, if memory serves me correctly, didn't join until the 40s, but or maybe it was the late 30s. But it's like, okay, if you're just joining to like keep your university lecturer's position, that's one thing. But you're the head of a slave labor camp.
And like, I personally, you know, I'm no expert on it, but I personally land on the idea of von Braun not being an ardent Nazi. I do still think he's far right as fuck, though, because his entire family was, like, his dad was an MP and an official in Germany's other extreme far right party. The one that just like wasn't anti-Semitic, but still believed all of the things the Nazis did.
I don't think he was an ardent Nazi either. There's no evidence of that. They're like, yes, right, he was in the SS, but as a engineer, he did that as like a prestige social ladder climbing type situation. He was absolutely like, these are the people that make fascism possible and not that made Nazism possible. Is the middle management, professional class people with no real political loyalties who go along with it to further their own careers and make their lives easier. That does not mean that they are not guilty, especially if they happen to ride that into promotion where they're, again, in charge of a slave labor camp.
Yeah. Like, it, you know, even if he is not an ardent Nazi, it doesn't change anything. He still did what he did. He still deserves like the tallest pillar in hell.
Exactly.
Also, I will send a picture later. Gunter Wendt, like the main launch manager, the guy who like helps the astronauts get into the Apollo capsule.
Well, yeah, you got to vent your Gunters.
There's pictures of him, like, I guess as a joke. It wasn't something he always wore, but like the astronauts gave him a Stahlhelm with swastikas all over it. And
yes.
And like the caption, Gunter Klink on it.
Yeah.
And there's pictures of him wearing it with like the Apollo 11 crew, which I don't know. I feel like considering how many of those astronauts fought in World War II, maybe they wouldn't have thought it was as funny, but
I think it was, I mean, the U.S. had, this is a different story entirely, but America's attitudes towards Germans, even during World War II, was kind of strange. Famously, German POWs kept in the United States were kept very loosely because Americans had pretty fond feelings towards Germans as, again, white people, that like, Germans were allowed to leave the POW camps and go into town on their own. They ate better in the United States than they did in Germany, especially, during that era. They were allowed to go to establishments that Black Americans could not go to. They had relationships with American women outside the camps. Like the way that they were, the fondness that Americans had towards your common Nazi or common German soldier apparatchik at the time was kind of like respectful.
They are warriors fighting for their nation just as we are for ours.
Exactly. And obviously this same courtesy was not extended to the Japanese for obvious reasons.
Fucking Japanese Americans.
Yes, famously so.
Worse
yeah.
than Nazi POWs.
They were, and like the internment camps that they put Japanese Americans in were significantly worse and like more rife with disease, illness, shortages of basic amenities than Nazi POW camps in the United States.
I will always remember positively then that my grandma described growing up on a farm in Canada, and that Nazi POWs were first forced to work the farm, and that her father spent the entire time like loudly berating them.
Hell
Good.
yeah.
You should have hit him with a stick.
Mush. It's just replacing everything. The horses need to go to the front, so we have replaced everything horse drawn with German POW drawn.
Yeah, this shit has one Hans power, bitch. Get going.
Whoa, Hans. Whoa, buddy.
Like, I'm not in favor of abusing POWs or killing them. However, you must hit a Nazi with a stick from time to time. just to let him know.
The horses needed a break. They need a little vacation.
Yeah. The German POWs being sent to be Irmhard Grautroop's new ponies.
We are sentencing you to 20 years of hard labor of pony play.
All right. So getting us back to this, Georg Ricci has been arrested by the U.S. Army, the same U.S. Army that is also trying to protect him, and he gets sent off to the Dora trial. Unfortunately, that all came to nothing. Because all of the witnesses were dead or in hiding, Ricci would be acquitted and allowed to return to work in the good old US of A. Although he did quit Operation Paperclip because he thought that they had betrayed him, quote unquote.
Betrayed him?
Get fucked, Ricky.
Loyalty among... Yeah, like, what do you mean there's no loyalty among Nazis?
Trust nobody, not even yourself. Fuck you, Ricky. Die in a ditch.
In the end, 7 of the accused were sentenced. So they have 19 accused. 7 of them were sentenced to life in prison. 4 of them got between 25 and 20 years. Although, like you said, most of these guys get knocked down to like 5 or 10 years for good behavior.
Yeah.
3 of them got between 5 and 7 years, and 4 were completely acquitted for lack of evidence. Of the thousands of SS collaborators, scientists, and engineers involved in the work at Mittelwerk, only one man would die for crimes committed. Hans Moser, who had been in charge of the last prisoner convoy to leave Dora and was sentenced to death.
Imagine how he felt. He's like, really? Only me?
Not to mention, we are just about to talk about this, other guys who did worse. Like Hans Moser absolutely deserved what he got. He led a death march.
Yeah. Fuck that guy. They should have done it slow.
Among those who only got off with prison sentences, especially the lighter prison sentences, were Erhard Brownie, commandant of the Rotelberode camp, and the guy who instigated the Gardelegen massacre. Otto Brinkmann, commandant of Elric, which we talked about last time, which was the most lethal of all of the Mittelbau subcamps, and Wilhelm Simon, who was in charge of all tunnel excavation. And again, like we talked about last time, the most lethal thing you could be doing at this death camp was digging tunnels. That was where the death rate was at its absolute highest. And for completeness, there was also a much smaller German trial for Dora crimes conducted in Essen in like the 70s. This one was restricted to only 3 accused, all of them high-ranking SS officers in Mittelbau, and all 3 of them were given light prison sentences. Hooray. So for the death of 26,000 people, just in the camps, add another 9,000 for civilians dead in London, Antwerp, and other cities. One guy dies, a couple of people get executed but for other crimes, and people are generally either let off the hook or given like 2 years in prison that quickly becomes 2 months. Yeah.
Yep, it's a trend. Not just in these camps, but in a lot of other camps and a lot of other crimes that the Nazis committed specifically. There's like this huge spike of executions, slowly trend into long prison sentences, which turn into smaller prison sentences. And then by the end of it, by about the 50s, all of those long prison sentences, some of them get life, some of them get 20 years, some decades, immediately drop down to like time served, drop down to 5 years, drop down to 2 years for health, quote unquote, health reasons, for good behavior, which is a concept that is absolutely wild to me as someone who like did a genocide. You know, yeah, he did the Holocaust, but he's been sweeping up at the fucking hallways real good.
He has not done any genocide since then. No, we have not allowed him near people to genocide, but we trust him. We trust him.
Yeah. And very few. You can count them, not even on a whole hand. I believe about 3 fingers, if memory serves me correctly, serve their entire life sentences and die in prison. And one of them was Hess, which doesn't even count.
Fuck.
Sentence for being too fucking weird.
Pretty much. Yeah, he was nuts.
Like if you want a Nazi official who probably was not as involved in the Holocaust, it's going to be Hess. You know, like, do I think the guy deserved absolute justice? Yes. But, like, considering who gets let off the hook, like, doesn't Hess escape in, like, 1940 or something?
He left pretty early. And he was not well mentally, famously so, and flew across the English Channel to try to negotiate on a one-man mission to end the war. And he was sentenced to prison by the authorities, and he was very ill in life, mentally and otherwise. Towards the end of his life, he never got released early. A lot of that, depending on who you believe, was specifically because the Soviet Union refused to agree to let him out early, and then he ended up hanging himself from his garden. So, like, he doesn't even count because he's not even involved in the after the war
he's just such
trials.
Like a weird case way off to the side.
Yeah.
They can't let his freak back out in nature.
But yeah, that is kind of the end of the script there. I do have a couple of questions. I'm hoping we can have kind of more of a bit of an open-ended discussion. We're like an hour and 15 in. But you mentioned something I wanted to ask about before, something that we did not cover as much in this series. I think it was the intentionalism you said.
Oh boy, this is one of my most fun debates in the most cursed study that I am involved in. So, to make a very long, tiring conversation short, there's this concept of the understanding of the Holocaust specifically that comes down to generally 2 schools, but there is a third, of functionalism versus intentionalism when it comes to how and why the Holocaust occurred. Functionalism, to make it very short, is that there was no master plan for the Holocaust in the beginning. Intentionalism is there was. Simple. And then there's the synthesis idea, which I generally fall into in the off occasions I put on my academic hat, which is the synthesism of both ideas of this functionalism, which sometimes it's called the bottom up concept, which is lower level Nazi functionaries and higher level Nazi functionaries over time radicalized into the Holocaust. It wasn't like a top-down
order. Okay.
Intentionalism it was top-down, and I believe, and so do many other historians, that it was a combination of the two. Like, for example, there was always this idea to deport the Jewish population of Europe from Nazi-occupied territories.
Right.
That is not up for debate. That was always there. Actually, that's unfair. There's technically 4 schools of thought. The fourth one is it never happened, and it's all a lie. But also, if it did, it's a good thing. But this idea that there was going to be a mass deportation, because in the beginning that did happen. There was a quote unquote encouragement to depopulate Jewish areas through forcing them out via economic conditions, anti-Jewish laws, things like that, to make things so uncomfortable that they would leave. And then that stopped working. So then it turned into, we'll just move them somewhere else. That's where you often hear the Madagascar plan, which was not really a fully formed plan. It was more of like a sketch on a bar napkin that they wanted to do. And then that turns into genocide.
Gotcha.
But within that debate is always what else were they going to do? And going to the Wannsee conference, where they really laid out the answer to the Jewish question, the final solution. They lay out it's going to be mass murder. But there was also other people, specifically people that worked in the war material section of the Nazi administration, of like, well, we need our slaves.
Yeah,
we still need our workers. And, just like the camps you talked about, the most notorious camp, Auschwitz, also had a work camp attached to it. It was Auschwitz III. And the whole idea was like, this is inseparable from the genocide, because the plan wasn't to develop some concept of chattel slavery of Jewish people and keep them in chains. It was work them to death and we'll figure out what to do later.
Right.
That was an inseparable part. But it when it comes down to functionalism versus intentionalism, you'll find some of the weirdest cranks end up in the intentionalism camp. But my professional opinion, it's definitely a mix of the two. But no matter what camp you fall into, slavery is always an inseparable part of it. It was the only way to make the Nazi war machine work as much as it did for as long as it did. It's an integral part of their plan. It was load-bearing. It was an integral part to their plan to destroy the Europe's Jewish population.
And not to mention, like, continuously, like, this machine had to grow. It had to expand to conquer more populations to feed in, because they were working them to death. Their net number of slaves was constantly dropping. And something I wanted to follow up with that, something that we covered in this series, is that this is all, like, a lot of the slave labor stuff is depicted as like end of war desperation on par with like the emergency fighter program. But like Germany's war industry was always load bearing slave labor.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And like whether or not through Organization Todt, under Speer, under Hans Kammler, through the concentration camp networks, I think there was also like there were organizations that would conscript French, Dutch, Belgian workers to like, you're not in the concentration camp system, you haven't done anything wrong, you are just going to do 2 months of slavery, and then if you survive, we'll let you go.
Yeah, it was like a fascist levée en masse, with like the added wrinkle of like, if you don't do what you say, you will be going to a concentration camp and you'll still be working. But now you'll probably also die.
And something specifically, so like before researching this series, I did not have as much of an appreciation for the differences in conditions across different camps. So Dora was not an extermination camp. It was a work camp from start to finish, the Mittelbau network. It started off as a Buchenwald subcamp, and then it got its independence kind of. But the difference in condition between camps, while still recognizing that like everything here is a concentration camp, there is nowhere good to be in this system. But it seems like a lot of the attitude comes down to like individual SS or commandants having this idea that prisoners are either resources to be expended brackets efficiently, or subhumans to be humiliated and degraded at every opportunity. Where like in some of the better camps, there were like almost quotes of SS officers saying like, yeah, your resources, we're going to spend you, you're going to die. But like, if I starve you right now, then you can't do work for the Reich. Versus camps like Elric that we talked about that were deliberately run with like the most utmost cruelty in mind as possible. And I was wondering if you could give some insight on kind of that. I may be generalizing a dichotomy across just a couple of examples, but this line of like work for extermination, as clinically as the Germans would have looked at this, there has to be a line of, if we work them, there has to be the break-even line of, do we want them dead more or do we want their work more?
Yeah, pretty much. And every camp was effectively a fiefdom of the commandant.
Oh, okay.
They were allowed to largely do whatever they wanted as long as the camp's stated mission was complete. And the ones that had work factories attached to them, they had a much lower rate of death. The rate of death was always there because obviously the safety and well-being of the prisoners was not on their list of things to do. But they had other things to worry about, like meeting numbers when it came to production, like production goals, like any other factor that's ever existed. And if those numbers were being met, they were safe. If those numbers were not being met, because at that point, the commandant's in trouble. And that is not good for them. Many commandants were relieved of command. Some commandants were actually arrested and executed by the SS.
Right. We talked about this in the last part, but there was one subcamp, the best subcamp, quote unquote, within the Mittelbau network was called Vida. And their commandant basically just let them have like free roam of a town, and they would have fun. They would play on the soccer field kind of thing until the SS from Buchenwald came in, arrested that guy, and suddenly Vida became one of the most cruel and sadistic camps in the network.
Mm-hmm. All of the guys in the SS Totenkampfverband ended up having different ideas of how to accomplish their so-called mission, especially ones that came from extermination camps. For example, obviously Auschwitz had a factory camp as well, but their factory camp still had a high rate of death in comparison to other factory camps and other slave camps because it was fucking Auschwitz.
So all of the SS guys at the work camp part of Auschwitz, their experience is death camp. They're going to run this thing like a death camp. Yeah,
and in essence, in the long term, that's how all these camps were going to be. There was never an end to the so-called final solution that ends with a captive work population, not of Jews. That was, there was General Plan Ost for the East, which involved obviously conquering the Soviet Union, but then mass extermination of a certain number of Slavs, and then other Slavs being kept for slave labor. Those Slavs would eventually be destroyed as well, but the long-term plan was in general to keep them for slavery. Jews, that was not the case. Jews were to be exterminated in the short term, whether that be through death from gas chambers, death from the Holocaust by bullets, as it's called in the East, or death from work. It did not matter. In the end, all of these people were meant to die within a very short amount of time.
It's just a matter of, across the different ethnicities, across these different groups of people, of how much the Nazis wanted to keep them around, where that line between death and work kind of was for them.
Generally, and that's also part of where the functionalism versus intentionalism debate kind of comes into the Nazi slave system, because some people use that as evidence of functionalism, and other people use it as evidence of intentionalism, depending on which way they're coming at it. Like, well, if the plan was always a top-down, heavy, detailed blueprint to destroy the Jews of Europe, then why would they keep them around for slavery? That's obviously like a fracture in the plan from the bottom up, and it's like, that could be true. It could also just be the fact that there was, especially if you look at the Nazi administration and how it worked, it was the leadership of every level outside of the Fuhrer, obviously, was intensely unstable. There was countless offices with a very strange chain of command, with some offices in command of multiple different people and multiple other different offices. causing constant competition, that it was that way by design. And it was inherently backbiting and backstabbing and always in a flux, that it caused people to become more extreme in one way, more productive in another way, if you want to call it that. So it leads to a lot of different things. But it's important to remember that even with all of that going on, the end goal was always the same. It's just some people had more concerns leading one way or another. Like people like Albert Speer, people like dudes in the rocket program, people in charge of armaments and engineering would have been more concerned with the proliferation and stabilization of slavery as a tool, whereas hardliners in the SS, like Himmler, for example, obviously they were more focused on the destruction aspect. And this was a constant give and take in a poll. Like I said, like even during the Wannsee conference, dudes that would have been very familiar with the rocket program and those factories would have been like, okay, but what about our pipeline of slaves? Like, what about that? That's what they're concerned about.
Oh, you're going to kill all our workers. Then no one's going to work in the factories.
Because that would be what they're more concerned about, because they know what I mean, their career's over if their metrics go down because they don't have workers
they've
anymore.
Got their quota.
Exactly.
I do kind of wonder about, like, we talked about this in this series, but the vast majority of people at Mittelbau were, Jews were largely not sent to Mittelbau until, I think it was May 1944, because Germany invades Hungary as soon as, like, anytime a German ally starts looking a little shaky, maybe they lose on the battlefield a few too many times, like, they invade Hungary, they invade Italy, and that immediately puts Hungary's Jews, like, into the concentration camp network. That is a fair point you bring up, because we talked about this in the last part of those Jews they were not trusted on the V2 lines. They were not trusted to work on this big super weapon. They were sent to Elric, the camp with the highest death rate, the camp with the most cruelty. And yeah, just like where other parts of this camp, the Dora camp specifically, the Mittelwerk rocket line, selected prisoners, like handpicked. Oh, you were like a Soviet POW who was a tank engineer. You have qualifications. Or you were a French resistance bomb maker. You're probably an electrician. They would be put on the lines. And of course, still, like, you know, the death rate is ridiculous. People are executed for... And I know we talked about this throughout the series, but like the amount of resistance I was so surprised by in the concentration camp network, whether that be light resistance, like the fact that, camp elders or capos were able to negotiate with the SS or argue with the SS in times of like, hey, do you want us to work for the Reich or not? You need to keep us alive. You need to feed us. Successfully, and improve the lot of life at Buchenwald, at Dora. Up to, I know you talked about this recently on Lions Led by Donkeys with the Sonderkommando rebellion, but Dora, a lot of the time prisoners were executed for quote unquote sabotage, but there was real sabotage. Like, people gave their lives making these rockets as shitty as possible.
Famously so.
Like, and doing it in a smart way, like they would hide welds inside of the rocket so that it could pass inspection, because they wound up in like a quality control arms race where they had to make this product as shitty as possible, but the Nazis were still inspecting it. You know, like Magnus von Braun was on site ordering executions.
Yeah. And there was other cases of sabotage from slaves, like purposefully putting sights on rifles incorrectly, sabotaging gunpowder and explosive powder and bombs so they didn't go off. Somewhat hilariously, this ended up, there was, I forget which factory it was that was helping manufacture the basic Mauser rifle for the Nazis. And they were purposefully fucking up the sights. So like if a soldier tried to aim, it wouldn't fire. And then fast forward about, couple years, and Israel is fighting their war of independence, and agents working for the state of Israel trying to get weapons for the Haganah and the Irgun and everything managed to import a lot of these weapons that were built for the Nazis, only to find out that they had been sabotaged.
Oh my god, my act of sabotage echoing down the generations.
Someone's grandpa like, oh man, we fucking shouldn't use these. I know what I did to them.
He just sees his own like stamp on it, just getting the flash.
Yeah, so some like RSF guy in Sudan right now with a rifle that like he can never quite get to work.
So that's why the UAE is never going to be a weapons manufacturer and only like a secondary reseller, because the same dudes who build their hotels and roads, they don't trust to put together assault rifles.
Yeah. You took my passport. I'm gonna notch your like red dot sight like 30 degrees up. Yeah. Fuck you.
I'm gonna build an AR variant that fires backwards.
It just throws the right bolt back through the stock. The arm just goes flying off.
Just throws a.
Joke's on you. Joke's on you. Emirati soldiers don't aim properly anyway. The bullets just like they're just holding it from the hip like off to the side.
No, jokes on you. Emirati soldiers are also not Emiratis.
Oh yeah.
Just jokes on you. It throws its bolt carrier into your own neck.
The country that is impossible to sabotage because there are only like 5 actual Emiratis and everyone below them is just like piles of slaves.
I had a very strange experience with the Emirati military because they had a small contingent deployed to Afghanistan, and they ended up rotating out for some strange reason for like a month out to my quite remote outpost, and it was just like a collection of dudes from Africa. None of them were Emirati.
Oh, like mercenaries.
They weren't mercenaries. They were kidnapped effectively. Like they had like one of them spoke very good English to me. They said that like it was really common for them to take job opportunities in the UAE, show up, and like they kind of had their passport snatched, and they're like, congratulations, you're in the military.
Which like, I imagine they weren't having to do too much like rough stuff in Afghanistan. Maybe better than working 20 hours building a hotel.
I mean, we didn't make them do anything. They didn't even send an officer out with them. Like
hell yeah.
They were just kind of chilling. We played Xbox. They seemed to be relaxed.
Nice.
Maybe we introduce you to the Xbox.
I'm just coming back to the same thing I have said repeatedly through this series of like, I don't want to say that is a good situation for them because the baseline is still that they are slaves.
Yeah.
Like maybe they have a slightly more chill version of that job, but like, Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, I mean, on the UAE roulette, I feel like they won.
Yeah.
Well, that's until, of course, they all got deployed to Yemen, but...
Well, that's
a different bag of war crimes.
Oh, I was reading that like there's now Colombian mercenaries in Sudan fighting for the Emirates.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. But I think that is about as good a time as any to call this one. And this is also where we are going to be calling our series on Mittelwerk, the Nazi death factory that produced the rocket that every modern launch vehicle traces back to. It is not an exaggeration to say that without the V2, space history would have gone very differently, and likely not made it anywhere near as far as we have. And yet, like we talked about, this was a weapon of pure terror. Von Braun knew from the beginning that this thing would never be accurate enough for tactical use. I think they use it, like they try and use it one time to blow up a bridge, and they fail. It lands all around the bridge, never hits it, and then the bridge just falls over because it's, shitty.
We did it, boys!
Woo! High five!
They launch like dozens of rockets at it, and then they finally hit it. It's like first try.
It's pity.
The bridge is like, all right, fuck, I'll fall down. Just leave me alone.
The American engineers are just like, all right, like they're just gonna keep trying until we do this for them. Come on, they're losing a war. We gotta. But like the V2 was by design, like it was only accurate enough that it could hit. Like smaller towns could not be hit by V2s because they were too small to like they were a dot within the accuracy range. The only thing that the V2 could hit was big cities, which meant that like they knew they were just going to be shotgunning this into civilian like homes.
Yeah, this is a terror weapon.
Yeah. Like there was never a real military, like this thing was a war crime from start to finish. And Wernher von Braun's weapons killed directly over 9,000 people in Western Europe, and many thousands more died building V2s in the tunnels under the Konstein Hill. Again, 26,500 is the overall estimate for Mittelbau. However, breaking that down into just how much went into the V2 is more difficult. This series has gone much longer than we expected when we went into it, but as we went, we kept finding new elements of the story that we felt needed to be told, things that couldn't be skipped over, especially for anyone who wants to properly understand space history. This industry that I work in, that I love, was built on the corpses of more than 35,000 innocent people, whether in Mittelbau, London, or Antwerp. Space is always presented as this like big, exciting thing to explore. It's the final frontier. It's Star Trek and Star Wars. And it's infinite possibilities, and likely life is out there exploring it all by themselves. But I think it is always important, especially like working in a field, to have that memento mori, to remember everything that like led up to it. Like the horrors of World War II, the paranoia of the Cold War. Boosters that launch exploration probes today to like far off planets were made from modified nuclear missiles that were designed by Nazis who escaped justice, and all of it traces back to a weapon designed for nothing but terror. And like, I don't know, that's not to say that anyone needs to like change their optimism about space. It doesn't change mine. None of that makes me want to explore it any less. But I always see this kind of like, people like to romanticize space history, especially because it is so small a field with so few actual like historians in it. They like to think that everything was just hunky-dory, and that is not true. You know, like every industry is built, you know, whatever you're working on now is built on the shoulders of giants, but it's probably also like knee-deep in blood.
Universally so, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I remember a quote, like, famously, this is how you get money in, this is a bit of a derail, but this is how you get money in the space industry. This is how Korolev was able to get Sputnik launched. He pretended that it was a nuclear missile first, and he told Khrushchev, like, hey, you know what would be an incredible way to demonstrate this new weapon? If you let me launch a dog into space. And von Braun winds up doing the same thing. He starts working on weapons because that's what people want. That's what the people with money are willing to fund.
And if anybody was conditioned to build a series of terror weapons, it would be the man who kind of invented them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The V1 as well. This another terror weapon, another thing that could be only fired at cities, made by other scientists who also managed to paperclip themselves. I don't really know that there's like a nice lesson I can wrap this up with, other than that, you know, this is an important thing for anyone in the space industry to know about. It's important for it to be remembered and like factored into any history that we want to talk about. It happened, it deserves to be remembered, and that it fucking sucks. Like every modern launch vehicle traces back to the V2 that killed tens of thousands of people.
Yep.
Hooray.
Isn't history fun?
Yay. This is the problem, because whenever I research history, there are so many times where I'm reading a book and I just see something and stop like, oh my God, I cannot wait to tell people. I cannot wait to like inflict this dumb fucking factoid on people. And then just as many times there's like, I whenever I'm researching or writing, I like stand up and have to like angry pace around my apartment.
Yeah, you got to go to the Futurama-esque Angry Dome.
Yeah, just because I'm pissed off by what I'm reading.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that is a good place to call this one. Joe, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for offering your insight on this topic. I think people will get a lot from it. I hope this episode and this entire series has been educational to you, listener.
Thanks for having me. I always enjoy floating around the internet and dropping in on shows to make people sad.
Hell yeah. I normally just get to make people laugh, and that gets boring really quickly.
I think it's...
I like to mix it up a little bit.
Unfortunately, I always have to say this, which is as history continues to turn, the field of genocide studies has only become more important, and the understanding of the multitudes of different things that go into it, but it also happens to be the thing that people like to pay attention to the least. They like to make broad generalizations. They like to not understand historical precedent, or just what's becoming also even more common. Yeah, exactly. Or, you know, like saying the words ethnic cleansing, they like to go into outright denialism. So it's always important as I like to say, to look history in the face and learn from it, to arm yourself against the ghouls that was to twist it, to do more crimes that are, maybe happening right now.
Yay. Or just, whenever every single... We're keeping that in. She agrees. That is a wonderful insight. But yeah, listener, thank you so much for sticking with us through this series. We hope if it wasn't fun, it was at least educational. And goodbye.
Goodbye.
Adios.
Thank you to everyone who have signed up to support the show. And a big shout out to all of our top tier patrons. Our cyborg cats are Boss, Katiger Reptile, Charlie, Comrade Sleepy Bro, Daniel F, Graham E, Jesselyn T, Jorg 2, the Bart Cybril suspected Alzheimer's check-in, Kamo, Lane of the Wired, Matt, Mobius Striptease, Murray Motorsports, Mysterious Stranger, Number Negative, Oil Drum, Pat, Paul C, Rare Scrungles Fingus 3rd Edition, Skylab Bricks, Source Force, Spectre Cohen, Tortilla Baron, Vivek D, and Wingsmith. Our space dogs are A Union Thug, A. Blinkan, Akiogo, Guy is Best Guy, Ariel Badger Release, Agent Carter, Alice N, Andrew F, Andrew K, Angie, Angry Old Man, Yada Yada, Anthony C, Atomic Hobbit, Otto Fox, Baron M, Batfay, Ben L, Binary Badger, Beamy, Boomzilla, Brian F, Brian L, C, Cantaloupe Was Taken, Carson D, Chainsaw Snuggling, Chris K, Christian K, Cole C, Captain Lag, CSD 2016, Daddy Bongo, Daniel, Diz Smiley, Dom K, Dr. Shockmaster, Enk, Aaron, Eric J, Fractal Moonlight, Furious Luddite, George B, Grant K, Griffin, former snow shoveler of Burger King, Heiko S. Has Devin seen the amazing Chinese film To Live? Howl's Moving Pictures by Rush, Ian R, JM M, James A, James C, James H, James T, Jamie K, Jarl Breadmaker, Jerry M, Jedediah D, John C, John Boy D, Jonathan G, Jonathan W, Johntastic 20x6, Juan, Just Morse, Kate B, Kate D, Corbin the Dog, Cruzzy, Lorgath, Luke O, McLean C, Mar, Marto, Maritza, Matthew M, Mr. Dr. John, Mitchell L, Newman Instrumentality Project, Narrow Ebb, New Name, Nicholas S, Norman W, Northeast Driver, NSFW NSA, Outlook Code, Panda, Peep, Poopbutt, Randall, RBK, Rato B, Riley, Sailor of Fortune, Scott K, Sean F, Sean H, Central Kazoo, Sean P, Silly Vixen, Sparks, Spirit of Thunder, Swanee, The Best Sean, Thomas M, Tim P, Toasty Ken, Trash Dude, Virash T, Vrisk, Will W, William O, Zachary JB, Zap, Zemo, Zim, and Zombie Dwarf. Albert Count, 182. Thank you for listening to another episode of Failure to Launch. If you want to follow us, we are Failure to Launch on Blue Sky and FT Launch Pod on Instagram. We also post our episodes with visual aids at Failure to Launch Podcast on YouTube. FTL intro and outro themes were provided by DJ Danarchy.